see how people are reacting, and then that helps me when I'm talking. But if not, that's fine too. So what we're going to be talking about today is, hey Ian, what we're going to be talking about today is how to improve your performance on exams. I suspect, many of you are, maybe all of you are first-year incoming students, and one of the fears you might have right now, maybe one of the more prominent fears that you might have, is that you don't have what it takes to succeed at university, that there's something innate in university. And the whole point of this lecture is to tell you that no, you probably almost certainly have the capacity to do well at university, but there might be environmental factors like what I'm going to be focusing on is how you study. These environmental factors like how you study that actually will be the big driver in determining how you're going to do at university. So I'm going to share with you my PowerPoint presentation, and hopefully everyone can see that. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing is talking about exam performance and what we in cognitive psychology know about how to improve exam performance. So one area of cognitive psychology is the study of human memory. And over the last few decades, we've learned quite a bit about how your memory system works. And from that lens and from that knowledge, we have a fair bit to say about what we would suggest is or a fair bit to say on how you can study better to do better on your exams. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this lecture. And what I want to do is I'm going to be talking about a number of key concepts. I'm going to be talking about the number one way in which students tend to study, which is rereading their notes. And I'm going to compare it to what I'm going to propose is the better way to study, and it's called retrieval practice. Then we're going to move on, and I'm going to talk about a common way that people practice, which is not just rereading their notes, but they do mass practice. So if they have an exam on Monday, they'll study all day Saturday, all day Sunday, into the evening and Sunday night, and then write their exam on Monday morning. That would be an example of mass practice. And what I'm going to propose is that it's much better to do what we call distributed practice. And then I'm going to focus in on the importance of organization. You're going to be learning a lot of material at university. Each one of your classes will be, full of information, and you have absolutely no hope of being able to retrieve all that information if you don't have some sort of organization to all that information, if you don't have an organizational plan. So we're going to talk about the importance of organization. And then finally, at the end, this is certainly not the least most important thing, it just follows at the end. We're going to talk about why it's important to make what you're learning meaningful. Because things that are meaningful tends to stick better in your mind. And then I'm going to conclude with a few final suggestions. So that's the outline of what I'm planning on talking about. So the first thing you need to understand as a student is that your biggest enemy when you start taking classes is something called the forgetting curve. And we've known about this forgetting curve for a long time. I think there was Hermann Ebbinghaus in 1885 talked about the forgetting curve. Actually, he was the first person to write about the forgetting curve. And the forgetting curve looks very similar. You can get the forgetting curve by studying just about anything, but it always looks familiar. What it describes is that you forget most of your information early on, and then after about a day, you have about 30% of the material that you previously knew to perfection left. And it declines from there, but at a much slower rate. So the key thing to note is that, if you take a look at this graph here, we've got on the y-axis the retention in percentage, and then you've got immediately 20 minutes, 1 hour, 9 hours, and then 1 day. And notice by over the course of a single day, if you knew something to 100% accuracy at one point, if you wait a day, then just because you have a human brain, which is subject to the forgetting curve, you will on average forget about 70% of the material, and it declines from there at a much slower rate. So really what you're dealing with is it's exponential curve that really hurts you early on, and then it sort of plateaus but continues to drop at a slower rate. And so the problem with this is that all this forgetting is happening behind the scenes. You may walk into a class, you may listen to the class, you may give your complete attention to that class, and then leave walking out of that class thinking that you know the material fairly well. And then unbeknownst to you, over the course of, let's say, the next day or two, you're forgetting a large majority of that material. And then what tends to happen is, you maybe if you write an exam at a later point in time, you may think, well, I know this material fairly well, because you did at one point. And then you discover when you try to write the exam that all that information that you once knew is now gone, right? And that can be quite a difficult situation to find yourself in. So we've got to fight this forgetting curve. And you probably know that you forget things. So the way you probably try to fight this forgetting curve is you probably reread your material, right? If you do study at all, maybe I've heard many stories about how some high school students don't study at all, and then they do well on their exams in high school, and then they think they're going to do well in university, and then they discover that it's much more difficult here. If you do study, a majority of students, when asked how they study, about 80% of the students will say that they reread their material, that's their primary technique to study material. But this technique has a lot of big problems. And the first one is that it's time consuming. So if you're taking psychology, for instance, psychology 100 or psychology, Psych 101 or Psych 102, over the course of those two classes, Psych 101 and Psych 102, we cover basically a textbook, a sizable textbook worth of material, and you're responsible for all of that material. And so you can imagine that the notes that you're going to be taking in Psych 101 and Psych 102 are going to be quite extensive. So if your primary strategy is to reread your notes, this becomes a very time-consuming process, not just for psychology, but remember, you may have 3 or 4 other classes on top of that. So rereading your notes, if that's your main plan, it's going to be extremely time-consuming. The second problem with rereading your notes is that it doesn't result in durable memories, right? So we know this from a research point of view. The research is pretty clear. There are file drawers full of information or research that shows that durable memories do not result from rereading your notes. The other problem is, and this is probably one of the worst problems, is it creates a feeling of familiarity. So because you've reread the notes, you think you know the material. But then when you go to the exam, you suddenly discover that you can't retrieve that material, and then you think it's because you're not smart enough, right? You knew it at one point, you were familiar with it, you thought at one point, now you can't retrieve it. Why can't I do that? Maybe it's because I'm not good enough. It sets you up for a fail, right? It sets you up for an outcome that you weren't expecting because you thought you knew it, but in fact you didn't, okay? So those are the 3 problems with rereading your notes. So I want to propose a different technique for studying your exams, and that is retrieval practice. And when I talk about retrieval practice, what I'm talking about is retrieving an answer to a question that you see in front of you, right, in your mind, or maybe you say it aloud, or maybe you write it out. It doesn't matter. The point is you have to retrieve an actual answer one way or another from your memory. So Callender and McDaniel did an experiment in 2009. And what they did is they had students do a number of different conditions. These students were randomly picked. They had equivalent abilities in terms of like their grades and that and experience in school. And so each of these different groups would have different conditions. So in condition 1, these groups of students would read a passage of text. Then they would read that very same passage of text, and then they were given a test. And they were measured, and the test was based on what they had previously read. Another group read a passage only once and then were given a test. So if you were a betting person, what would you bet on? Would you bet on the people who read the passage twice doing better, or the passage once better? Any ideas? Which group? Yeah, okay, so Mike is suggesting that the second group was going to do better? Or sorry, if they read it twice, they'd do better. Read it twice, do better. That's probably what most people would say. And if you didn't just listen to what I was just saying, this is probably your first inclination. And in fact, Mike, you are correct. If in this condition, participants who read the passage once, read the passage twice, and then were given a test immediately afterwards, did better than the group that just read it once, which is counter to everything I just said before this, right? But Callender and McDaniels had another condition with a different group of students. And that group of students, again, the first group, they read the passage once, the same passage, they read the same passage twice, and then there was a delay, right? Like a 5-minute delay between the final reading of the passage and then the test. And then the other group just read it once and then a 5-minute delay and then did the test. So you can see the difference. The second group was identical to that first group, condition 1, except now there's a small delay between the final reading of the passage and then the test. And in this situation, neither group did better. They did equivalently. There was no one group that did better. So this is not good news if your plan is to reread your notes, because what this suggests is that there was no benefit to reading a passage twice as compared to once, right? Right? You would expect this would do better, but when you have a small delay, then you don't. So memory retrieval, what I'm going to be arguing, is a better strategy for studying. So we call it retrieval practice. There's 2 benefits to this memory retrieval practice. Number 1, it tells you what you know and what you don't know, right? So remember the first problem, one of the problems with rereading your notes is it creates a feeling of familiarity, right? You think you know it when in fact you don't. But with retrieval practice, you know when you don't know something because you didn't retrieve the answer or you retrieved the answer incorrectly. So it tells you what you know. So the stuff that you know, then you don't have to study it right away, right? You know it now. But it also tells you what you don't know, and that's the material you're probably going to be focusing in on to study better. And the second benefit of memory retrieval is it's the way that you can consolidate memories, right? We know based on lots of empirical experimental research that if you want to store a memory, you need to do retrieval practice. That's the mechanism to get memories to stick into your brain. So if the goal of studying is to make things stick in your brain, then you got to do retrieval practice, right? Full stop. That's a full stop period. So when you start studying for your exams at university, what I'm going to argue is retrieval practice is the way you want to make things stick, okay? So Roediger, to follow up on this, Roediger did another experiment in 2011, and his first condition, he would have grade school students hear a story that named 60 concrete objects. And then this condition, the students were tested immediately after hearing that story, and what he found was that there was a 53% retrieval accuracy. So 53% of those 60 concrete objects were retrieved immediately after hearing the story, which is not bad, right? About 30 objects. If you wait a week and then test them, right? So you do the retrieval practice by doing the test immediately after. And then if you wait a week, then performance will drop down to about 39% of those 60 objects, okay? So that's what he did in condition 1. In condition 2, a different group of grade school students heard a story that named the same 60 concrete objects. But this group wasn't given a test immediately afterwards. They were tested 1 week later, okay? So they didn't get the benefit of doing retrieval practice, which I argue is making things stay in your brain or stay in your mind. So they did a test 1 week later, and look at their performance. 28% retrieval accuracy. That's an 11% drop compared to that group in condition 1, which I just finished showing you here. Remember in condition 1, we had 39% after a 1 week delay. After a 1 week delay here, without the benefit of retrieval practice immediately after the test, it dropped down to 28%. So that's 11 percentage points. And so maybe at this point, some of you are saying, so what? Well, 11% is a full grade point, right? That's the difference between a B and an A. Okay, and the only difference between these 2 groups of students was that one group had the benefit of doing retrieval practice immediately after the test and the other group didn't, right? Completely environmental factors. There's no one group that's smarter than the other group, right? We know this. We know that these students were picked at random. They had average ability. The only difference in outcome, and this was a full grade point outcome, was that one group did retrieval practice immediately after they heard the story. That's it, right? So in condition 3, they followed up on this a bit more. They had grade school students that would hear a story that named the same 60 concrete objects. This time they were given 3 quizzes, right, that would test a subset of the material of those 60 items over the course of a week. So they're given these 3 quizzes after the initial exposure, and then they were given a test 1 week later, and performance for those students was equivalent to students who took the test immediately after in the first condition, right? So remember, in condition 1 over here, the immediate retrieval accuracy was 53%. In this condition, instead of giving a full test right after hearing the story with the 60 concrete objects, they were given 3 short quizzes, and performance was equivalent to that first condition group, right, immediately after the test. So this is very, very impressive, demonstrating the importance of retrieval practice. So another experiment by Roediger and Karpickle in 2006, they had college students study prose on various scientific topics. They went to, I think it was like a popular mechanics magazine, and they would give them various prose that were selected from that. In condition one, they were given an immediate recall test. So they'd read the story, and then they were given a test. In the second condition, they reread the material, right? Again, rereading the material is the most common technique people use, students use to study the material. So that was condition two. Then they were, both groups, condition one and condition two, were given a test after a 2-day delay. In condition one, the performance was 68%. In condition two, it was 54%. So when you do retrieval practice, performance in this situation was 14% better than when you just simply reread your notes. So obviously, rereading your notes is an inferior way of studying for your exams. When you come to university, this is the technique you want to do. You want to do retrieval practice. And so what does this mean? This means like using cue cards, right? If you know that your exam is going to have definitions and short answer questions, what I would suggest is you buy yourself a bunch of cue cards or buy a program that simulates cue cards, and you put down a question on one side and then you put the answer on the other side, and what you do is you practice retrieving the answer to the questions, right? So what I would personally do as a student is I would go into a class, I'd walk out of that class and I'd start thinking about all the questions I could ask that would require me producing a response that basically sums up the knowledge that I got from that particular section. And I would add that to my cue cards and I'd start studying. I'd start doing retrieval practice. The only time I'd be rereading my notes is because if I want to make sure I understand the material, right? We'll get to that later on. So next, what I want to do is I want to talk about the difference between massed versus distributed practice. So again, what I'm going to be looking at is some research from the area of cognitive psychology that focuses in on what we know about mass practice versus distributed practice. So mass practice is when you study a whole bunch of material in a specific and short period of time. So most people believe that that you'll learn better by continually doing something over and over and over and over again. It's you might think of the Rocky song, "Eye of the Tiger," song theme playing, and you're just gonna keep on studying. This is when they have the montage in the movies, right? And they have these people studying in an exam or a room or a classroom for days and days and days and days, and then they write the exam and then they do well. This idea that by being single-mindedly approaching a task and doing it until you finally get it is problematic. This idea that if you practice and practice and practice, eventually mastery occurs. It's problematic. I used to do this as a student, and I know my students in my classes do this all the time. If the exam is on Monday, then they study on, maybe they study Friday, but they're studying for sure on Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday night, and then they might get some sleep, they might not. Mike's nodding his head. You might get sleep, they might not get some sleep, and then they write the exam, and they get through it. And so this is a technique that a lot of university students use. I suspect a lot of you high school students, if you do study, you use this technique as well. And I want to dispel this myth. And so this is an old experiment by Keppel. We've known the advantages and disadvantages of mass practice for quite some time. So this little graph, what we've got here are pairs recall, right? So they had to recall word pairs, and they had two different types of learning. On the x-axis, you've got types of learning: mass practice versus distributed practice. So mass practice, again, is when you study a whole bunch in a relatively short period of time. Distributed practice is when you might study the same amount of time, but the amount of time that you're studying is in smaller bits, right? It's like eating a meal at McDonald's where you're starving to death and you eat the Big Mac and the fries in 2 minutes flat, versus eating a meal in a nice French restaurant over the course of 4 hours. Okay, that's really an example of what I mean by mass versus distributed practice. Hopefully that sticks. So here's the thing. So if you do mass practice, so what they did was they noticed the darker green bars, it's a 1-day delay between the study and then the test. And then the lighter bar is a 1-week delay. And this is important. Okay, so for the dark bar, right? Okay, if you do mass practice, what they found was that performance was actually the best, a little bit better than over here. But mass practice, if you do mass practice and you have a small delay, performance is pretty good, right? Distributed practice, notice over here, this is a different type of practicing. It's still pretty good, but it didn't do quite as well as the 1 day delay, right? But it's still pretty good. So right now you're probably thinking as a student, hey, this just supports my strategy of mass practice, because the best performance is right here. And you know what? Okay, maybe that's correct, but take a look at what happens when you have a 1 week delay. Okay, when you have a 1 week delay and you're doing mass practice, take a look at the step here. Right, if you were walking down steps and you had a step like this, right, that would be a killer step. Like you're going down the stairs, right? That's a big drop, right? So when you do have a 1 week delay and it's mass practice, you forget a lot of the material, okay? If you do distributed practice, look at this step here. It's almost like a slide, right? You don't have to, it's a very gradual thing. There is forgetting that's happening after a 1 week delay, but it's not nearly as much. And this turns out to be really important. So the example I give is my intro psych students who are taking my Psych 102 class. So what happened, the way my Psych 102 classes are organized is I have a first midterm, I have a second midterm, I have a final exam. First midterm's on the neuroscience components of psychology. The neuroscience, as a neuroscience folks into psychology. So they do things like how vision works, how perception works, stuff like that. And some of it can be fairly technical. So students are oftentimes very nervous prior to that first midterm exam. And my exams are always on a Monday. And so students will study Friday night, Saturday, Sunday night. They show up, it's really funny, they'll show up on Monday morning and they're wearing sweatpants and cut t-shirts. They got baggy eyes and they look like they haven't slept for 3 days, and many of them have not slept for 3 days. And then they write that exam, and then it turns out they do fairly well on the exam. I might have an average of like 71%, which at university, that's cause for rejoicing when you know that the class average is 71%. There is much rejoicing in the classroom. Hooray, it worked out really well. My second midterm is later on, and it covers a different set of material, right? It's focusing primarily on the cognitive science aspects of psychology. And they do the same thing, right? Because it worked the first time. So they do mass practice. The exam's on Monday. They study Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Same look to the students when they come in on Monday morning. They write the exam. They do fairly well. The average will be about like 70, 71%. Much rejoicing again. But then the final exam comes, okay? And the final exam is cumulative. And you're going to discover this soon, that a lot of your final exams are cumulative. That means you're responsible for everything. Well, here's the problem. They were doing mass practice. They have a final exam that's coming up, and not just the psychology final exam. They got 3 or 4 other classes on top of that, and they have a relatively short period of time to study for. You've got just a couple days before the final exam, after the classes end, before the final exam season begins. So you don't have nearly that much time to study for it. And guess what? You did mass practice. Do you see the problem with this step now? You did mass practice, so guess what? All that material that you learned for that exam, it's gone. Not all of it, a good chunk of it. Right? A good chunk of that material is gone. That's a big step down. And so when they write the final exam, the phrase, I shouldn't use this because it's too dark, but we talk about blood being on the floor of the final exam, right? The final exam drops the average, like a stone falling into a 70-foot lake, right? It drops. So imagine trying it a different way. So the students here, I should put like a sad face, right? The students here are not happy. But there is another group of students, and they didn't do mass practice, right? The students who do best in my class are the students who did distributed practice. They're practicing all the time. And when they have to write that final exam, they don't have nearly as much, they haven't forgotten nearly as much of the material. So for them, they have a reasonable amount of time to get ready because they've been studying for all this material all throughout the semester, right? So what we've learned is that mass practice has a short-term benefit, but it has a long-term cost, right? The way your human memory tends to work is that it learns best when you learn small bits of material over long periods of time, right? That's how your brain likes to digest and make things stay, right? Is if it gets exposed to the same information on a semi-regular basis over a fairly extensive period of time, right? Think about all the people that you know in high school, all the names that you can remember, right? There could be 100 students in your graduating class, and you may know a significant portion of them, not because you tried to learn each one of their names, but because you were exposed to them over 4 years on a semi-regular basis. You'd say, oh, that's so-and-so, oh, that's so-and-so, no, did you hear the story about so-and-so, or you went to a party with so-and-so. That's how your mind tends to remember things best, is when it's small piece of information over extended periods of time. So as a student coming in, right, this is what I suggest you do. Do distributed practice, right? So distributed retrieval practice, where you're retrieving information and you're studying every day, like 20, 25, 30 minutes segments. So here's an example of what I'm trying to say. This is an example of 3 different students. We've got Leslie, Leanne, and Nora. So this is a hypothetical mind game that I want to play to sort of illustrate the point. So let's assume that Nora, Leanne, and Leslie all have equivalent abilities, right? They're all capable, just like you and probably your colleagues. You have both the equivalent abilities in school. But these 3 students are going to study in very different ways. Nora is going to use mass practice. Leanne will somewhat distribute her practice, but not nearly. Look at the duration, the 1 hour practice sessions, so fairly long, versus Leslie. She's doing it more distributed. She's got half-hour sections, okay? So they will all study for the same amount of time, 4 hours, right, in our hypothetical situation. But Leslie has much more distributed practice than Leanne. Leanne has more distributed practice than Nora. And what the research tells us is that all things being equal, the student that does the best is the student that has the distributed practice compared to the students who do mass practice. Again, the way your mind takes in information best is when it's in small amounts of material over extended periods of time. Repeated exposure, right? The last thing I want to show you before we move on is distributed practice by showing. So this is what this curve is showing you is the forgetting curve, right? So remember, I said the forgetting curve is that exponential function where you do a lot of your forgetting earlier on, right? About 70% of the material disappears within the first day. This is after you learn the material to a perfect criterion of 100%, where you can retrieve it without fail, without mistake. Once you've learned to that, if you wait a period of time, you're doing most of your forgetting earlier on. By about a day later, you'll forget about 70%. So imagine that this is that circumstance, this orange line here. That's the circumstance you're in on the first trial, right? You've learned things to perfection, and then you wait a period of time, and then you lose about 70% of the material over the course of a day, and then it continues to decline, but at a slower rate. But if you expose yourself to that material at a later point, another episode, right, what you'll notice is the forgetting curve still applies. You're still forgetting the majority of the information earlier on, right? But then it tapers off and it sort of plateaus near at the bottom. But notice that the difference is that the floor has just increased. So the more times you expose yourself to this material, what happens is the floor of this forgetting curve starts to rise. So you're still forgetting, you still have a human mind that's prone to forgetting, but the more times you expose yourself to the material, the more the floor rises, until eventually what will happen is you'll forget very little to nothing. And hopefully your neurosurgeon is at this point. Hopefully the person who's going to be defending you in a court of law is at this point. They hopefully have a whole bunch of knowledge that's stored in their brain, and they won't forget any of it because they've been exposed to the material over and over and over and over again. So as a student, what I would suggest is that you fully engage with your studies. And so you need to make sure you keep exposing yourself to this material over and over and over again so that you can maximize your performance on your exams and remember this material later on. So I want to talk about another study that was done that got a hold of a very exclusive group of individuals. These are student surgeons. So many of you, some of you may be interested in going into medicine and becoming doctors, and you probably are all aware that this is a very competitive field. It's not that you can't get into it, but it's very, very competitive. You have to do very, very well. in university to have a chance of getting into medical school. And to get into surgical residency is also incredibly competitive. So we're dealing with a group of students who are exceptional at the craft of studying, right? These are people who know how to study effectively. They're very intelligent, probably, just like you are, I'm sure, but they're also highly motivated, and they've been and they have had a long history of doing very well on exams. Okay. So in this study, they had 38 of these very exceptional surgical resident students, okay? And what they did is they got access to the university, where in this university, in this medical school, the history of this medical school was that they would take 4 short lessons in microsurgery over the course of a single day. That was what they historically had always done. And what the researchers did was convince this medical school to let them adjust their curriculum slightly, so that instead of taking all of the lessons in microsurgery over the course of a single day, that they would have multiple practices, so 1 lesson per week. So instead of the microsurgery being done in a day, it would be done over the course of a month, right? They take these 4 short lessons per week. So single day practice, so students who had the practice on a single day, when they were tested 1 month later, 16% of the students damaged vesicles beyond repair. So these students, if they damaged vesicles beyond repair, that was a fail in microsurgery, and this would have put their surgical residency in jeopardy. They scored lower on all measures compared to the other group that got the multiple day practice. So the group that was randomly assigned to multiple day practice, they dramatically outperformed the other group on all the measures. So we know these are both exceptional groups of students, but the group that did the best, they weren't innately different from the group above, I'd argue. What I'd argue is the difference was a result of a different strategy for studying, distributing the practice, okay? So I've argued that retrieval practice is the best way to study compared to rereading your notes. I'm not saying you can't reread your notes, by the way. I'm simply saying, reread your notes, make sure you understand the material, but when you're focusing in on trying to learn the material, use retrieval practice. Then we talked about the benefits of using distributed practice over mass practice. Yes, mass practice might have a short-term benefit, but it has a long-term deficit or a long-term problem, which is that you're going to forget the material much more quickly. Distributed practice does not have that problem. You'll remember the material, and you'll remember the material for a longer period of time. So distributed practice is also how you want to study. Now what I want to do is focus on the importance of organization, right? As I've already told you, there's a lot of material that you're going to be learning when you go into the university. And this has an impact. So I know that you're all probably reasonably good students, but grade point averages can, on average, drop by a full grade point. So if you come in with a B average, a lot of students will end up, the average would be like a C average afterwards. And in part, I think it's because things are much more intense. There's a lot more material for you to learn. And so organization is going to be key in helping you make sure that you don't get overwhelmed by this information. Sorry. So organization is something that you want to have. It's essential if you want to make sure that you do well on an exam. So this is an old study. I love talking about it. In my cognition class, I always bring up this study to illustrate this point. But what these researchers did was they would present a template to they had 2 groups of participants in their experiment. In both groups of participants got this template where they have minerals at the top, and then they would have metals. So metals are a type of mineral, and stones are a type of mineral. And under metals, they'd further break it down into rare metals, common metals, and alloys. And stones, they had precious stones and masonry stones. And there was 112 items. And so this is not all the items. There was 112 items that were listed below. Okay, so things like platinum, silver, gold, aluminum, copper, lead, iron. There was 112 of them, and their task was simple, right? Try to remember as many of those items as possible. One group, they were given this template, this schema, and the words were placed appropriately underneath. So you notice platinum is under rare metals, gold is under rare metals, under precious stones, you've got sapphires, emeralds, diamonds, rubies. So the items matched up with where they should have been placed, right? So this was the organized group. they had another group, and it was the random group. In the random group, they had all these items randomly dispersed. So platinum metals might be under precious stones. Sapphire might be under alloy. Bronze might be under masonry stones, right? They're all just randomly intermixed. So the random group is readily utilized, or they couldn't utilize this this structure, right? This organizational structure. And so then they asked them to try to recall the items. And what you can see is that the organized group, right? This is their first attempt, second attempt, third attempt, fourth attempt. This is the organized group. This is the random group. The organized group, honestly, they did fantastic on the first time. They got 65% of the items recalled. By the third and fourth attempt, they were able to recall all 112 items. And compare that performance to the random group, right? Where the first attempt they had 18%, second attempt on average it was 35%, third time it was 47%. By the fourth time, they were equivalent to the performance of the first attempt of the organized group. Right, so organization for these students had a tremendous impact on performance. Right, again, these students, they're, all things being equal, there's no difference between them. Right, there was large numbers of students placed in the organized group and in the random group. There were just as many A students and B students and C students in both groups. So the difference was one had an organizational scheme they could rely on, and the other didn't. And performance reflected that. So to illustrate this, I want to show you the importance of organization. So I'm going to ask you to remember a group of words, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you something called the peg word technique. Maybe some of you have been exposed to it already. Maybe some of you have not. But I'm going to teach you a rhyme, okay? And so before we proceed, I want you to know the rhyme. So the rhyme is this. And even though you're on mute, I want you to say this aloud because it'll stick better. So the rhyme is, one is a bun. Maybe, Mike, can you put on your mic and then you can model for everybody?
Yes. One is a bun.
One is a bun. Two is a shoe.
Two is a shoe.
Three is a tree.
Three is a tree.
Four is a door.
Four is a door.
Five is a beehive.
Five is a beehive.
Six is sticks.
Six is sticks.
Seven is heaven.
Seven is heaven.
Eight is a gate.
Eight is a gate.
Nine is a vine.
Nine is a vine.
10 is a hen.
10 is a hen.
Can you go through the rhyme?
Sure. One is a bun.
Yeah.
Two is a shoe.
Yeah.
Three is a tree.
Yeah.
Four is a door.
Yeah.
Five is a hive.
Yeah. It's a beehive, actually, but that's okay.
Six is sticks.
Yeah.
Seven is heaven.
Yeah.
Eight is a gate.
Yes.
Nine is a vine.
Nine is a vine.
10 is a hen.
10 is a hen. Good. Two is a
shoe.
Five is a
beehive.
Seven is
heaven.
Eight is a
gate.
10 is a
hen.
Nine is a
vine.
One is a
bun.
Good. Okay. So you know the rhyme. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a selection of words. And so these words, I want you to try to connect the words to the part of the rhyme. So I'll show you what I mean in a second here. So here's the word. Cup. So one is a
bun.
So think of connecting bun and cup together. Right? So maybe you want to make this, so the trick to this is you want to try to use all your senses. So try to visualize what the bun looks like, what the cup looks like. Imagine motion, right? So one is a bun. Imagine putting the bun into the cup. And imagine what that cup looks like, right? Is it a red cup? Is it a blue cup? Does it have a chip in it? Is it a porcelain cup? Mike, what does the cup look like to you?
Oh, it's like probably old Country Rose teacup.
Does it have a chip, or is it's in good shape?
It's in good shape. It has like a gold rim.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So one is a bun. Imagine putting, the bun in that cup. Right? Why would you put a bun in the cup? Doesn't matter. The more bizarre it is, the better. It'll make it more distinctive. Right? Maybe there's butter coming off it and there's steam. Right? Make it as vivid as you can. One is a bun and the word is cup. And what you have to retrieve is the word cup. Okay? You got it?
Got it.
Okay. Two is a
shoe.
The word is flag. Okay, so you got a shoe. What's the shoe look like?
It's a Nike runner.
A Nike runner?
Yeah.
Is it like one of those old-fashioned ones that says the stripe down the side?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. And the flag, what kind of flag?
It's a Saskatchewan flag.
Okay, like a rider flag or just a Saskatchewan?
Like the Saskatchewan flag.
Okay.
Like the provincial flag. Yeah.
Like what you said. Yeah, okay. So imagine the flag like in the shape of a snake, right? It's kind of rolled up and it's moving around, right? The shoe, right? Two is a shoe. The word is flag. You've got the Saskatchewan flag and it's moving around. Can you visualize that?
I sure can.
Awesome. Three is a
Tree.
The word is horse. So imagine underneath the tree, you've got your most amazing horse and it's cold and the horse is neighing and there's frost coming out of its mouth and nose when it neighs and it's stomping and frolicking and it can't wait for Mike to jump on the horse and ride off into the green pasture.
Woohoo.
You got, so what does the horse look like?
Oh, it's a white horse. It's probably got like a long flowing mane. Its tail is nicely groomed.
Does it have a saddle on it?
No.
You're gonna ride there back into the pasture.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's nice. So three is a tree, and underneath the tree is a white horse. You know, yeah. So four is a
door.
Okay. So on that door is the word is dollar. So imagine nailing an American, because we don't have paper dollar bills anymore, right? Right, we said loonies. So imagine, maybe it could still work. Imagine taking a Canadian loonie and nailing it somehow with a really sharp piece of metal to a door. The act of actually doing that, hearing the thump, 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 thump as you with difficulty nail a Canadian dollar loonie to a door. So you got that image in your head? Okay. So four is a door, dollar. Five is the
beehive.
Okay, I want you to think of brush. Okay, so imagine somebody taking a brush, a hairbrush, and shoving it into a beehive, and all the bees coming out, and then screams, right? That type of thing, right? It creates an image, right? It's a bizarre, and yes, it's maybe it's disturbing to you, right? Hearing, because they're getting stung by bees. But the point is, it's making it distinctive, right? Yeah. In your mind. So five is a beehive. Think of brush, somebody shoving a brush into an active beehive, right? And then what follows from that. Okay, so five is a beehive. Six is?
Sticks.
So the word is pan.
Pan.
Right. So sticks, imagine the sticks are creating a fire, and the pan is on top of the fire, and you can hear, sizzling eggs in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's like a cast iron pan. Right? Maybe it's a camp out. You just finished riding your horse through the pasture and now you're camping out, having some eggs. Does that make sense? So a pan with a fire on top of these sticks, and you're cooking eggs on it. What was that one? So the seventh word is clock. So seven is?
Heaven.
Right. So clock in heaven, that's an easy kind of connection, I think. Maybe it's like a golden grandfather clock in a cloud scenario, right?
Yeah.
Something that looks like heaven, and whatever that might be for you, and you've got a clock there, and it's something that would stick out. Maybe it's gonging or something, right? Maybe it's eliciting some sound. It's the time is nigh, your time is up, or something like that, and right, that sort of thing, right? So try to imagine seven is heaven, and the clock being in heaven for you. Okay.
Got it.
Okay. Eight is
a gate.
Okay. The word is pen. So imagine a gate that is made up of Bic pens. The ones with the little tops on, right?
They're Bic crystals for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Bic crystals, and they come in different colors, right? You don't want to just have blue. You can mix up. You can have green and red and black and all the colors, yellow, right? And let's say that those pens are making up the gate, right? So eight's a gate. The gate is made up of big pens.
Okay.
Okay. So 9 is a,
9's a vine.
so the word is paper.
Okay.
So maybe think of like a crepe paper, and the vine is made up of crepe paper. And that means it crinkles when it moves around, and maybe there's a wind flowing, and maybe there are different colors as well. But 9 is a vine. That vine is made up of paper, of different color types of paper. And maybe the wind blows and you can hear the paper, crinkling and that sort of thing. Okay.
Got it.
10 is a,
Hen.
imagine that hen is wearing a shirt. The word you have to remember is shirt. Right? So imagine something that's going to be distinctive that you won't forget easily. It'll be a very distinctive shirt. And the hen is wearing it, and the hen is proud of the shirt that it's wearing. It's got an attitude. It's like, yeah, look at me, I look great in this shirt. Right? Something, whatever it is. It's whatever color you want it to be, whatever style you want it to be, but something that's going to make you remember the connection between hen and shirt, the word that you have to recall.
Right on.
Okay?
I got it.
So, 1 is a
bun, cup.
Yeah. 2 is a
Shoe, flag.
3 is a
Tree, horse.
4 is a
Door, dollar.
5 is a
Hive, brush.
6 is
Sticks, pan.
7 is
Heaven, clock.
8 is
Gate, pen.
9 is
Vine, paper.
10 is.
A hen, shirt.
So you remember every single one of the words in order. Let's see if we can do it in reverse order.
Okay.
10.
Hen, shirt.
Shirt. Yeah. 9.
Paper.
8.
Pen.
7.
Clock.
6.
Pan.
5.
Brush.
4.
Dollar.
3.
Horse.
2.
Flag.
1.
Cup.
Did everyone, without any mistakes, in reverse order. Now let me see if I can pick out a few in this scene. So let's say 7.
Clock.
What was the second word? Clock. 3rd word.
Horse.
6th word.
Pan.
10th word.
Shirt.
1st word.
Cup.
So hopefully, I can't see your faces, but hopefully this is impressing you, right? The students who are taking this session. Hopefully this is impressing you, right? So we just gave out 10 words, and if I was to ask students in my class to remember 10 words, there would be, I guarantee you, there'd be 1 or 2 students who'd probably use a technique similar to this, who would get all 10 words. But most of them wouldn't. Most of them would get maybe 7 or 8 words and then fail, and some would get fewer than that. And if I tried to get them to do it in order, they would have problems. If I got them to do it in reverse order, they simply wouldn't be able to do it, right? But because the difference isn't that Mike is, I don't want, how do I say this? Mike,
Genius.
Mike is a genius, that's true, but so are all of you, right? So what I'm trying to say is that what determined performance wasn't that Mike is simply a genius. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not that Mike is simply a genius. It's
That's debatable, but
it's the technique, right? It was this environmental factor of having an organizational plan or schema. This example, we use what's called a peg word. The peg word, it's using that rhyme. 1 is a bun, 2 is a shoe. That's what provided this organization, this structure, so that you could better remember your material. And so when you're studying for your exams, again, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room to get the best mark in the class. What you need to do is use the right tools, right? And memory tools, like mnemonics, can be really, really helpful in making sure that you don't forget, or you minimize the amount of forgetting that you're going to be doing, okay? Is there any questions? If you have any questions, you can feel free to just ask it at this point. No? I'll move on. Maybe we'll questions at the end. So what? Just to recap what we've covered so far. We've talked about retrieval practice and the importance of that. We've talked about distributed practice, right? Now that's the better approach to use. We just finished talking about the importance of organization. Oh, something's clicking. Oh, that's okay. We talked about the importance of organization. The last thing I want to talk about is the importance of meaning. You want to make what you're learning meaningful, because if you make something meaningful to you, you're far more likely to remember it. And so I'm going to talk about a theory, Craig and Lockhart's theory, but a theory called love is.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick, Tom. Just
Sure.
letting you know we have 10 minutes until the next session. So if there are any students that are, I don't know, just try to be quick in this last part.
Yeah. Okay. I'll hurry up, man.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to have a few slides left. So
cool.
Levels of processing theory. It's this idea that if you want to get something stored in memory, you've got to process it in a deep way. And what I mean by deep is you have to engage with the meaning of it. You have to understand it, and you need to find a way to connect it to stuff that you already know ideally, right? You need to think about it in an active way, right? So these researchers, Craig and Lockhart, what they said is, look, it's not about just rehearsing information. It's about how you rehearse the information in your mind. So they talk about the difference between what they call shallow processing and deep processing. So shallow processing, you could be asking questions like, is the word written in capital letters? If you were to see a word and I was to ask you, is it written in capital letters? You don't have to know anything about the meaning of the word. You just have to look at the superficial aspects of the word, right? Whether it's in capital letters or not, and then you can generate a correct response. But if you process things in a deep way, right, you can't just look at what the word looks like. You have to focus in on the semantics, the meaning of the word. So would the word fit in the following sentence? He met a blank on the street. So if the word was dog, that would make sense, right? But if the word was justice, right, that wouldn't make any sense. So you need to know something about the meaning of the word to answer it. And that's what we call deep processing. So an experiment that was done way back in 1969 by Hyde and Jenkins, they would analyze the list of words by, so there was two groups of participants, okay? One group of participants, they would have to analyze the list of words by doing shallow processing, and other words they would process in a deep way. So they would be asked a question, they'd be shown a word, and they'd be asked a question like, count the number of E's in the word. They would be shown another word, and they would say, how pleasant is this particular word, okay? So that was one group. Another group were given a test. So they were shown as a set of words, and these were, by the way, the same words that the first group had seen, but they were told simply, here's a list of words, there's going to be a test on them, try to remember them, okay? The first group of participants, when they got their test, they were surprised by it. They didn't know there was going to be a test. They were simply told, here's a list of words, we're going to ask you questions about each of the words, and then they were surprised by the test later on. The second group, they were simply told there was going to be a test, and so they had to try to remember the words as best they could. So to sum this up, in group one, they were told simply look at the words and then answer the question. So they might see the word like spider, and then asked how many letters. That's superficial, right? You don't have to know anything about the meaning of the word spider to answer that question. Desk, how many E's? Again, superficial, right? You don't have to know anything about what a desk is to answer that question. Book, how pleasant is the word book, right? You have to know something about what does book mean to you to answer that particular question. So that's deep, okay? Shallow, then deep. And then they were given a test. Recall the words that were presented to you, okay? So this group was surprised by this test. The second group, they were told, look at the words and memorize them. You will be asked to recall them later. So they'd see the same word, spider, desk, and book. Then they were given that test to recall the words as best you could. So this graph for me is a really profound graph. So group one, that first group that was surprised by the test, that were asked either shallow or deep questions, this group, you can see the shallow questions over here. They counted the number of letters, they counted the number of E's. On the y-axis, you've got the mean number of items that were recalled. This group, when the words were processed in a shallow way, they weren't recalled as well. When they were processed in a deep way, right, rate the pleasantness of each word, recall improved, right? When you engage with the meaning of the word, your recall improves. Everybody in this group here, in group one, that answered that contributed to these three bar graphs, three bars, sorry, they were surprised. This group over here, that's the second group. Look at their performance. This group was not surprised by the test, right? They were simply told, here's a bunch of words, remember them. And what you'll notice is that this group that processed the words in a deep way did just as well as the group that were instructed to memorize those words for a test. So this should tell you something important, right? This group had the intention to remember the words. This group didn't. But intention then can't be the determining factor of what determines performance. It was what determined performance was how you process the words, right? That's what matters. If you engage with the material in a meaningful way, that is the mechanism of how you increase your chance of retrieving the words, not the intention to. Because if it was about the intention, why are these two bars the same? Right? So it's about how you engage in the process. Make sure that when you're studying the material, you're focusing in on the meaning, right? Because if it's meaning, if it has meaning, and especially if it's meaningful to you, you're way more likely to remember the material. So to sum up, use retrieval practice when you come into the fall. Use retrieval practice as your mechanism for, or as your strategy for studying for exams. Use distributed practice. So study all the time. One of the things I oftentimes say to students is, you know, if many of your colleagues in high school, they got jobs now, and they're working 40-hour work weeks, right? If you're taking 5 classes, and let's say you're taking 5 classes and they're 3 hours per class per week, that's 15 hours. What do you do with the other, 25 hours, right? What I would suggest to you is you should think about studying on a regular basis, right? Treat this place like a job. I'm not saying you should study all the time. You need to sleep. You need to have a life. You need to watch some Netflix from time to time, right? You need to take care of your mental health. So you got to have a social life, right? But you can have a social life and you can take care of your mental health while also being a studious student, right? Just treat it in a way that's going to maximize your chances of success. Treat it like a job. So retrieval practice, distributed practice, use that. Make sure that you use organizational techniques like mnemonic devices. Like I gave you one example, the peg word technique, and try to make it meaningful. So final bits of advice. How much time do I have left? None?
We're pretty much done.
Okay. So last thing I'll say really quickly, time is your most precious commodity, okay? Use your time. Every student has the same amount of time, and every final exam season, they're begging for more time. So use all your time, right, in ways that are constructive. Remember why you're here. Stay focused on your task. You're here for a reason, right? You have goals. You have objectives, right? Remember that. Don't forget that. Don't get sidetracked. And then the last thing I want to say is try to have fun. Try to enjoy your experience here. If you're happy, if you're a happy person, if you're enjoying what you're doing, right, you're way more likely to get through the tough times that you're going to encounter eventually. So stay curious and enjoy your experience. I hope you found this session useful. So any questions? I don't know if we have time for questions, unfortunately.
If you have questions, you are welcome to send them through UR Courses, and we will forward your questions on, or we'll try to answer them ourselves. We'll let you know that if you want to rewatch this recording, we will put it up for you to be able to view later. Thank you so much, Tom, for your time today. I hope everyone learned something valuable or important or about themselves. The next session is going to be starting right away. If you need to quickly grab a snack or go to the bathroom, feel free to do that, and we'll be good to go. See you all later.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye.